Dan Coates, the CEO and founder of Ypulse. And Ypulse is an organization that you all need to know. They do market research. They know more about millennials and Gen Z than anybody I know. Dan?
Thank you. That means something coming from Tonda. Yeah, as she said, we're a market research firm based in New York City. We do syndicated and custom market research. And you'll absolutely get a chance to experience that because after this event, the good folks from Kids at Play Summit will send you an invite for you to be able to have free access to our silver tier of syndicated content for the rest of the year. It's free, which is awesome. They're paying me to do that, which is awesome. Okay, great. Well, listen, so what I'd like to kick off with is a bit of generational theory. You'll have to forgive me, but I feel like in order to predict the future, you got to look backwards sometimes. And let's start it all with sort of, what are the three things that kind of make a generation what they are? It's kind of, 3 points of it. The first is how you're parented. Parenting determines so much of who we are. Let me give you some examples. Did any of you ever hear, as you were growing up, children should be seen but not heard, or children should speak when they're spoken to? I heard it all the time. You don't hear that much anymore, do you? Equally, when I was growing up, parents were authority figures. You did not mess with my father. There were repercussions. Nowadays, I'm a father of 3. I feel like I'm more of a customer service rep. Hi, son, what do you need? Money? Great. When do you need it? Okay, great. It's on its way. So definitely, things have changed from a parenting perspective a great deal. And so let's have a kind of a look at the sort of the main dominant generations. There's some folks, the silent generation, the GI generation. We're down to a scant few of the GI generation nowadays. The silent generation, folks that are over 72 years of age, they're definitely an important generation. But it all starts with the boomers. Boomers have changed everything. In fact, that's part of their generational archetype. Everything they touched, they changed. They changed childhood when they were children, high school when they were in high school, college when they were in college. They changed the workplace. They changed the family. Actually, one of the things that boomers hated about their upbringing was the authoritarian structure of their largely GI generation parents telling them what to do, what to say, when to say it. And so basically, boomers vowed that when they became parents, they were going to change that. They were going to change the dynamic, less authority, more flattened organization. So we'll see how that matters in a little bit. They kind of, their childhood era was the American high, and then they came of age during the consciousness revolution. They were burning bras and draft cards. They were burning everything. So, it's part of their generational archetype to dismantle society. If you think about it, things were pretty rigid and messed up when they came on the scene. So they vowed that they would change a few things that were really out of step with their current reality, race relations, gender relations, and so that's another thing that we'll talk about a little bit when it comes to millennials. So they grew up as increasingly indulged children. The couple of world wars were over, a Great Depression. Society was kind of relaxing, and the boomers kind of charged off and made it their own. Young crusaders focused on morals and principles. Never trust anyone over the age of 30 until boomers turned 30, and then never trust anyone under the age of 30 after that. And so, their generational archetype always creates a lot of strife. They want to break things up and then reform things, and they're also very much, us versus them mentality. And we'll see that change over time. Then came my generation. I'm very proud of my generation. I want to say a couple of things about it. All the bad behaviors that the boomers invented, we Xers perfected. As teens and children, we spent a lot of time unsupervised on our own, and we did not do good things with that time. And so all the bad behaviors, teenage drinking, teenage pregnancy, illicit drug use, all these things peaked during Generation X. That's something we can all be very proud of. We brought it to new highs. So we kind of were alienated and risk-seeking as adults. It's made us into great entrepreneurs. I grew up at a time when, nobody told me how to do anything or what to do. I had, at the age of 7, a horse, a gun, and a motorcycle, and it was up to me to decide what happened next. Sometimes not with great impact. We should be pretty good. The difference between boomers and Xers is that Xers don't care what you believe or don't believe. You get your happy how you want to get your happy. Just leave me alone and let me get my happiness how I want to get my happiness. And so you can always tell an Xer in the workplace, they're the ones saying to you, listen, just tell me what you need, tell me when you need it by, and then leave me alone, because I really don't want to have another meeting, a group hug, a lot of interaction. Just want to get back to my desk and get things done. Okay, then along came millennials, and I can say this because I'm an Xer, but boomers changed parenting. They decided that Xers were kind of the scourge of society. We were bad kids, and I remember as a kid, if anything bad happened, I would never go to the police because you'd get blamed for it, right? So real individualistic, independent mindset with a strong mistrust of authority. Millennials come along, and all of a sudden, parenting and childhood is reinvigorated and reborn. Happened around early 80s. In 1982, I don't know if any of you remember, all of a sudden there was this baby on board sign in every car, like, oh my gosh, there's a baby in this car, everybody back off. And I can't help but with some bitterness recall a youth spent in the back of a station wagon with no seatbelts whatsoever, and my parents chain smoking in the front seat with air conditioning turned up to 12. Nobody really cared whether we were safe or not. But certainly millennials came on board, and boomers said, okay, hey, this is super important. All my life's dreams are held in this one vessel. I burned my bra, I burned my draft card. It didn't make a difference, but I'm going to make a difference now with this one individual. And so this is where all of their hopes and dreams for racial equality and gender equality all of a sudden, manifest themselves in this precious offspring. So, millennials kind of grew up as treasured offspring in prosperous times. Mom and dad rarely ever said no. Again, society thought, hey, we've got too many people thinking about themselves only. Let's kind of create more teamwork, collaboration. I think if you guys raised millennials, my first two are millennials. Barney the dinosaur, it was all about, we're going to work together. I could stand it personally as an Xer. But certainly it caught on with my kids, who don't seem to do anything on their own. They seek consensus across the board. They want to make sure that everybody's happy with the outcome. And there isn't this sort of sense of individual spirit that Xers and boomers both shared. So they're confident. I could show you 1,000 economic reasons why millennials are screwed. They're not listening. They're actually making their way through life without that advice. And they're convinced that if we all work together, we're going to make all this better. And as the largest generation in American history, they're really powerful. They're starting to understand their own power and capability. Okay, so then, this parenting conversation's changed. All of a sudden it's tilted about, if you're a parent, it's almost like a competitive sport. Who's a better parent? You're constantly worrying about whether you're doing it as well as the next door neighbor. I get critiqued all the time by my co-parent class about the things I'm doing right and wrong. And so Gen Z comes along, and all of a sudden, these are small children growing up in turbulent times where there's kind of this expert culture and a 24-hour news cycle, showing the world everything bad that's ever happening to a child anywhere on the planet. And so all of a sudden, we're kind of instinctively sweeping kids to the sidelines for their own protection, right? In a sense, the pendulum swings back and forth. We're probably a few years out from the pendulum reaching this point where we all go, wait a minute, what are we doing to these poor kids? They're structured from the word go. They've got play dates that are supervised by parents. If you read Parenting Magazine, there was one, ask an expert question, which was, if I need to run out and my kids are over the age of 13 and they're having a play date with a friend, should I leave them alone? And of course, the expert said, absolutely not. What if there's a dispute? You won't be there to moderate it. It's like, well, maybe that's the reason why kids are losing the ability to kind of moderate their own outcomes. And so we'll quickly find that we've overdone it on the protection parenting, and it'll swing back the other direction. It'll take about 80 years to get the other extreme. And then 7-year-olds will have horses, guns, and motorcycles all over again. It'll be awesome. Okay, so then definitely would say that there's some evolution of the youth experience. Ypulse has been around for 14 years. We've been studying young people, and millennials. We first started studying in 2004. When they were sort of teens and younger. They were raised in the boom. Gen Z and teens today are raised in the recession. Millennials were kind of optimistic until the bottom fell out from underneath them. Gen Z, you definitely see more pragmatic. We just measured the top 10 life goals of of Gen Z. The first 4 have to do with education, the next 4 have to do with career, and the last 2 have to do with personal things like learning a skill and losing weight. And saving money. I mean, they're all about saving money. This is a generation that's been they don't remember a time before the Great Recession, so they're very, very pragmatic. They've got a plan, they've got a backup plan, and they've got a backup for their backup plan, just knowing that things don't always work out. Definitely visual communication was on the rise with millennials, but it's so dominant with Gen Z. You're talking about folks that would rather send a picture than words. Even when you look at it educationally, a lot of colleges are getting rid of texts like Middlemarch. It's too long, it's too many words. We can't possibly make a kid read a 300-page book. Let's find something shorter. How about more pictures? So definitely would say that visual communication is ascending and dominant, and we can anticipate that the next generation will be even more so. Millennials are sort of dubbed first generation digital, but Gen Z doesn't even remember a time before social media. Specifically with early millennials, they'll talk about the AOL days and the dial-up days and sort of the early clunky digital era. Nowadays Gen Z are incredibly impatient. Like if their phone doesn't give them exactly what they want like that, they're sort of like, it's broken, this thing sucks. So then let's move on to the next beat, which is millennials as parents. Every day 10,000 children are born in America. And those are born 93% of the time to millennial parents. There's a scant few Xers, who are aged at 2018, 37 and up, that are having kids, but largely having children and being parents is becoming a millennial experience. You just have to walk the floor of CES to see how millennialized parenting has become. And if any of you have had parents in the past, it's amazing how well we did with no technology. I mean, I'm astounded by the fact that without the biometric sensors all over a newborn's body that we could possibly ever raise them properly. So millennials are really ardent parents. They like it. They really enjoyed their childhood. What was not to like about growing up in the 90s? We all loved the 90s. I miss it a lot. But definitely millennials as parents, they just want to recreate that wonderful family experience that they had. So 54% say being a parent's part of their ideal life. 24%, 1 in 4 millennials are already a parent at this point in time. And 87% are having 1 to 2 kids. Definitely they're not having huge families economically, but they're interested. In fact, the graph on the right, if you scan through it, only 12% of millennials are kind of not thinking they want to have kids. So 88% think that parenting is something that they want to do at some point. And you've probably heard the special snowflake thing, but millennials themselves want to definitely help their children feel treasured and special as well. They want their kids to kind of feel that same thing that they had. As they look back on their childhood, that's one of the things that they loved most about how they were parented, is how special their parents made them feel. 76% feel that technology makes them a better parent. 72% let their kids play with their phone or tablet to keep them occupied, right? So it's going to be, I've been here all day, I heard some of the commentary from the front of the room. It's going to be tough to convince a millennial that you need to hold back on the technology when it comes to raising children. It's kind of it's their thing, right? They love it the most. They get advice from a multitude of sources. Their parents, spouses and partners, friends who are also parents, pediatrician. But then look at the technology that comes in. Websites, blogs, social media, online forums. These things are now the new thing, the new source of information for millennial parents. And here's the most important part. They're definitely raising their children as streamers. Again, I have a 21-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 3-year-old. The 3-year-old doesn't even know what television is, but she sure knows what Netflix is, and she knows Amazon Video inside out and backwards, but she doesn't really understand the concept of television and linear programming and channels. So 65% of millennial parents pay for a streaming account, watch shows on Netflix regularly, and 75% of millennial parents say their kids watch more content on streaming services than they do on cable. And I would totally attest to that. Okay, so then let's think a little bit about the kind of dominant technologies that are in the hands of millennials. You know, certainly their smartphones are everything. They use it from everything from messaging, listening to music, social networking, watching videos. The younger you are, sending pictures or video over indexes, playing games over indexes, taking pictures. Again, anything visual definitely over indexes. Oh, and you see this chart, you know, how many times do you look at your phone in a given hour? If you're 25 to 35, it's 9 times. If you're 18 to 24, it's 12 times. If you're 13 to 17, it's 15 times. What do you think people under the age of 13 are going to be looking at their phones? How frequently? It's going to be up and to the left. So the social media platforms are slightly different between millennials and Gen Z. A lot more YouTube, you know, in Gen Z. Facebook is nowhere near dead. Instagram, Snapchat. For millennials, Facebook reigns supreme. You know, this notion of constant connections, you know, they kind of feel like it's the air that they breathe, it's the oxygen. And I've seen a lot of stories about this sort of notion of social media-induced isolation. It's kind of the opposite of that. What you have to understand is when you see a young person looking at a mobile device, there's another young person on the other end of that device, right? If you think about it, for we Xers, you know, we'd go to the mall and hang out. You know, I grew up in Canada. We'd go hang out in a field, you know, turn on the car lights, drink beer, pee in a bush. I mean, that was how we hung out. But parents have kind of locked down the youth experience to the point where children have to go online to be amongst their peers in an unsupervised level. So, you know, we kind of put them on lockdown in the physical world. It all squished into the digital world. And so digital is where they spend all of their time and where their relationships are held. 90% say that technology helps them stay close to their friends. Technology is very extremely important in helping them stay close to friends. They're using, you know, everything from text messages to social media apps and group messages to stay in touch with their friends daily. But if you ask their favorite ways, they'd like to spend time face-to-face. They just don't have the opportunity to do that. So when you look at the essential things, text messages, face-to-face, and Snapchat, 60% say it's easier for them to express themselves online than in person. We're seeing that sort of digitization of relationships, and now there's this new behavior that's evolving where they feel more comfortable online than offline. 52% say that a digital relationship's just as real as a offline one, and 44% say they have strong relationships with people that they've never met in the real world. They've never met in the physical world. So these are the apps that they consider, you know, critical to helping them stay close to friends, things like Snapchat and Instagram. Video hangouts are certainly big. You'll sort of constantly see kids, you know, kind of streaming. You'll go into a teenager's room and they'll be doing their homework and you'll notice their phone has their best friend on a video stream and they're just hanging out, all on video. So what they're doing with their friends on video, apps like Bonfire and House Party and to a certain extent iChat, they're just hanging out with mundane tasks. I'm doing homework, I'm doing chores, my friends are here with me, just digitally, watch a live stream or live stream an event to specific people. So I'm going to end it there because we're out of time. Again, watch your inboxes for an email to invite you to this cornucopia of digital insight on young people, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dan.